Okay, lost the video there. Part 2, because I actually hit the stop button. But showing you my Roselle here. This is a dead plant, and I don't know if you can see this stem, but this plant actually rotted from the ground up on the stem. So this wasn't a case of pathogen on the roots. This is actually on the stem itself. And I've lost 5 of my 14 plants this year to this pathogen. 4 were on the front side of the house, 1 in the backyard, which is where I'm at now. Done some research. The best guess I have is it's probably, you know, a Fusarium bacterium, maybe Fusarium oxysporum, something along that nature. I'm not really an expert on plant diseases. Haven't taken any samples to the extension office. Again, I like kind of the laid-back management style with Roselle. You know, I'm not wanting to put a lot of labor inputs. I'm not wanting to put a lot of fertilizer. I'm not looking to spray fungicides. I'm looking for an easy-to-grow plant. At the end of the year, I can harvest and maybe make some sorrel for Christmas time. You know, spice it with some ginger, maybe some cinnamon, a little bit of rum. That's how I like to enjoy my Roselle. I'll dry it and enjoy it throughout the year, but I'm not looking to go crazy with, you know, pesticide disease management and whatnot. So I've lost 5 out of 14 plants, which is certainly problematic as a producer, but me as a hobbyist, currently I'm not as worried about it. I have noted that the plants which did seem to get to the root, or the stem rot, I should say, they seem to be on the side of the house, again, which when it rained, there was standing water. So it didn't stand for long, but I did associate it with wetter conditions. I'm not sure if that has much to do with it. I have friends that grow Roselle, and they've also noted this as being a problem this year. And it's not something which was a problem in the past for myself or my friends who also happen to grow Roselle, my nerdy plant friends. You know, Julia Morton's article, which, you know, I've been a fan of for quite a long time, also doesn't mention the problem. So I did find other sources indicating that it is a curb, I guess, on commercial production, is that, you know, you'll sporadically get a stem rot and the plants will die. But I'm not looking to do a lot of fungicides to address the problem. Really, my plan is to leave it unmanaged. This sounds crazy, but I want the disease to be as bad as possible, because I want the strong plants, which seem to have a natural resistance to the plant, I want to collect those seeds and propagate them next year. So my pseudo theory here is that, again, in the past, this stem rot wasn't a problem. Maybe it wasn't a pathogen that was present. Maybe our summers weren't as wet in the past, so it wasn't an issue. We've been propagating plants just from seed. Maybe some of the plants we propagated didn't have a resistance to the disease. Wasn't a big deal on the years where we didn't have the problem. So I want to, in a way, start to cultivate the plants just through natural selection, is my plan with my Roselle. Because again, I'm only growing 14 plants this year. I've lost 5, I have 9 right now. I don't have a big yard. I'm planning for the future. So I'm trying to get a very healthy seed stock. And in the future, I want to expand production. Because again, I think this is a great plant. So that's sort of my management style itself. And again, sort of my pseudo theory, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. So again, I'm going to let the disease run rampant, and then cultivate the plants. And I haven't lost a plant, and even though this looks fairly green, this was actually pulled up, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, it got pulled up relatively early. I mean, I could tell the plant was dying. It just sort of starts to dry out. Looks like it's very thirsty. And it still retained a lot of moisture in the leaves. I just sort of threw it in the woods behind the house, because I actually plan to use it for an end of the semester crop project if it came up, as an example. So that's why it looks so fresh. But again, it's been about 3 weeks. I haven't lost any other plants, so I think my 9 that I have now are going to be pretty safe. And just forgive me, I'm not a professional lecturer, so I'm sure this has been sort of all scatterbrained, but I think I hit most of the point. So I'm just going to kind of bring it all around here. So the life cycle of the plant: seedling, vegetative growth, flowering mode. Now we're hitting mid-December and it's time to harvest. So you would actually physically clip the calyxes off the plant. And then that starts the last sort of labor-intensive bit, which is the actual preparing of the Roselle. And I like to use a punch tool to separate the calyx from the seed pod. And the reason being is that the seed pod is covered with these fine sort of, I guess, fiberglass-like spiny hairs. And you'll get them in your fingers if you try to pick the calyxes off the seed pod. It's not a very fun time. So my preference is to use a little punch tool, and this is a highlighter. I've used modified highlighters in the past, where I've taken them apart, and then you have a round bit which can sort of fit over the stemmy bit of the seed pod, and you push it through, and then the seed pod is ejected. Now this highlighter is a little bit too fat, and the calyx is dried, so it's a little bit too skinny to really see, but it kind of gives you an idea that you would use a punch tool. And I'm holding my camera, so I can't really do this with two hands, but punch tool, then sort of pop out and eject the seed pod. So that's my preferred processing method for Roselle. Then you can just sort of dry it on trays in the sun. That's what I've done in the past. Had a lot of success with it. And so just sort of bringing it all back home. I think Roselle is a great plant. It's fun to grow. It's easy to grow. I think it has a lot of values both in the expat community. So if you can find a market for Roselle, you can certainly have it amongst the Latin Americans, Caribbean immigrants, again, sorrel. There's a lot of use there, but again, I'm looking to build the domestic demand for it. So I want to sort of say, hey, this is a part of our cultural past as Floridians. We've forgotten it, but this plant was part of sort of old cracker Florida culture. I think we should go back to using it. I think there's a lot of growth in the area of teas, particularly herbal teas. So I think, in addition to marketing for some reputed health benefits, I think we as a society are going to get more into teas. I know I went over management style and the cultivation practices. This is a very easy plant to grow organically. So we can hit the local button on our little niche or niche market survey form. We can strike off organic if we choose to cultivate it as such. And again, I don't think there's any reason not to. We can hit off, full of nutrients, full of health benefits. Again, there'll be some resources, references listed in the comments. And so I think from that aspect, it's a plant that has tremendous potential. So even though I think it's underutilized, I'm all in favor of it. I'm Mr. Roselle. I love the plant, love to grow it. So that's definitely why I chose it for my project. And just to wrap up some of the problems, I know I mentioned before, shoddy germination rates. I attribute it to my seeds now because the seeds that I've sown this year were from a harvest from a few years ago, which was affected by an early frost. And so the calyxes will be destroyed by frost. Again, we're going to be harvesting, into December, beginning of January. That's a time when frost tends to hit here in Central Florida, where I'm located. And so that's a problem that can sometimes sort of hit you at the wrong time if we get an early frost, as I swat at mosquitoes some more. So as far as my seeds go, my theory is that because I had to crop them early, that particular year I actually cut whole segments of the bush off. I just cut whole branches off and threw them all in the house because I didn't want the calyxes to get damaged by frost. And then I had a few days at my leisure to watch movies, television, and then take the calyxes off the branch, eject the seed pod, dry the calyx. So I do, even though I had poor germination rates this year, I do plan on having better germination rates in the future because I don't believe we're going to get an early frost this year. Fingers crossed. So the seeds will have plenty of time to mature on my plants, which again I've naturally selected for enhanced disease resistance. So bringing it all around full circle, I'm optimistic about my future growing Roselle here in Central Florida. And not only do I want to sell the plant, I want to make people aware of it, because, you know, really it's a beautiful plant. And as I mentioned before, it's fun to grow. And even if you weren't going to use it as a tea or a food supplement, you could certainly grow it as an ornamental. And I know it's getting dark, but I'm just gonna right here. Here's some of my plants. They're big, they're bushy, they're beautiful, and I am very fond of Roselle. So it's been a fun class. I took this class in conjunction with entomology, and so that helped sort of, between plant science and entomology, helped me formulate the idea about, hey, maybe the management strategy is going to be more of a natural type management strategy. I'm not going to try to eliminate all the pests. I'm not going to try to eliminate all the disease. I'm going to let the plants sort of engineer their own resistance. And just like our agricultural forebears did before us, they naturally planted the plants which grew well in their area, and through the sheer forces of nature, their plants were selected to be vigorous growers and disease resistant. So that's it. That's Roselle. It's been a fun semester. And thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Hope it wasn't too long.